This video is sponsored by Samsung. As a creator, I work across a pretty wide range of media on a daily basis. I could be editing a video for this channel, or maybe I'm working on some pictures that I'm going to post on social media, or maybe I'm prepping some work that I'm actually going to print. It's important to not have any surprises that might require re-editing or worse, reprinting. Over the years that I've been doing this, I can be honest and tell you that I've learned some hard lessons and I've gotten better as the years have gone by. And I can tell you today that the most important partner in my workflow is my monitor. The monitor has to be one that I can trust, and that's very important because what I see on the screen needs to be what I'm going to see with the output, whether that's video, whether that's in print form. It needs to be predictable. Otherwise, I'm just guessing at things, and I can tell you that if I want consistent results, guessing is not a good option. I have a project that I'm currently working on that I'm really excited about. So I have a series of 5 images that I've taken over the last year. And what I want to do is I want to get some really large scale prints done of these. So we're talking 40 by 60. And what I want to do is actually redo the entryway to the studio. I don't have much going on there right now. But what I want is when somebody comes up the stairs, you're entering the studio for the first time, I want something that has a very big visual impact. I think these images are going to work really well for this, and color and resolution are probably the most important aspects of this little project. Obviously, detail is extremely important when you're going this large, but in addition to the high-res detail, color is really important to me. Color is a really interesting subject because I think it's such an interpretive one, and I think as an artist, the way that I see color is very specific. So for instance, if you look at something like, the sky, and everybody knows that the sky is blue. Well, what kind of blue? It probably depends on what time of day, what the weather is doing. So there are different shades of blue, and you can even interpret these differently when you get into the digital space. So I'm very picky about how blue a blue is, or how orange an orange is, or a red. So contrast and color are extremely important to me. Of course, doing prep work on all these files before they go to the printer is extremely important because at this size, your cost is generally pretty high. So if the color's off or I'm not happy with something, this means it needs to be reprinted, and that can start to get expensive really quick. So it's really important to have a workflow and a process where there really aren't any surprises later on down the line. So the monitor that I've actually been using for the last couple months on all of my projects is the Samsung ViewFinity S9. This is a 27-inch monitor. It comes in a 16 by 9 configuration, so it's really good for both video as well as print projects. This is a 5K monitor, so it gives you 5120 by 2880 resolution at 60 Hertz, gives you up to 600 nits of brightness and a contrast ratio of 1000 to 1. And the most important thing to me is that this monitor uses 99% DCI P3 color space. So if you're not familiar with the idea of a color space, this is essentially how many colors a monitor or a device is capable of outputting at. And so the standard for many years has been sRGB, which is adequate, and the reason that has been the standard for a long time is because so many devices were able to support it. So if you could get something looking good in an sRGB color space, it was predictable as to how that would look from device to device. DCI P3 is a much larger color space, so you're going to get more color information on your output, and this has become the new standard in recent years. This is really important for various projects because, like, for instance, you might see areas of your image like this red down here. Well, that's not just one shade of red. You have a photograph, so it's got shades of red that are going through that. You might have shadows in areas, you might have highlights in other areas. The more reds I can get out of that image, the more dynamic it's going to look. You don't want something that's just saturated. You want something that looks natural, but still is brilliant and has that presence on the image. And I think that's something that for me is very important. So having the correct color space is absolutely essential to getting your work done. Of course, I also want to say that these color spaces are very important because what you want is consistency across devices, or consistency when you're going to a print output. You want to be able to see something that you trust the end result is going to be. What you don't want is to guess something, put it up, and then it looks different on another monitor, it looks different when it goes to paper. And so having standards for color spaces is very important, and I think that's one of the highlights of this monitor. And speaking of color, one of my other favorite things about this monitor is how easy it is to calibrate. This is something that on a lot of monitors is very involved. It requires you to buy more hardware. It's very time-consuming, very complicated process. Samsung has boiled it all down to something that is very easy. You simply start the process, and it actually uses the camera on your smartphone to calibrate. So you're going to hold this in front of the monitor as it goes through all the various colors and various light processes, and then it gives you a calibration profile. To activate the calibration profile, you simply go into the monitor settings. It's under picture mode, and you can cycle through all of the available profiles, or you can go to the custom calibration that we just set up. This is something that I wish all monitors have, and I love that Samsung have included it. This is probably one of my favorite features on this monitor. It gives me that accuracy, and it's not hard to do. A couple other things that I love about this. One is the design. So you're going to notice that the bezel edge on here is very thin. In other words, it's pretty much all screen. The image goes pretty much all the way to the edge, and you see just a thin bezel. Now, this is cool because it's maximizing the screen space, so aesthetically it looks really good. But more importantly, you're only using the space that you need for the monitor. So with a 27-inch monitor, there's not a huge footprint with this. The ViewFinity S9 is super easy to set up right out of the box. It's basically the monitor on a very well-designed but very simple stand. And one of the things I really love about this is, let's say you want to adjust this to get it to eye level. It's got a hinge on it, so you just push it up or pull it down, and it's really easy to set up exactly where you want it. Also cool is, let's say you want to work in vertical format instead of horizontal. It's just a matter of tilting the screen over, and then you can work in vertical. This is very useful if you want to maximize your screen space for working in vertical images, or for people who do things like write a lot of code. This is very useful. The ViewFinity S9 also features a matte display, which I really like. It works well in any desktop environment, especially because it's anti-glare, so the color distortion is reduced. I can light my studio space however I want, natural or artificial. You can be near a window, you can be near a lamp, and the images remain consistent. The S9 also eliminates flickering as well as reduces blue light. This is really beneficial if you're working for long stretches and you have to look at your monitor for long periods of time. It reduces eye fatigue substantially. You also have a number of ports on the back, so it becomes super convenient if you need to attach external hard drives or any kind of peripherals you might be using. As a creator, color is probably the single most important part of my entire workflow. Color is at the heart of everything that I'm doing, so it doesn't matter whether I'm editing a video or whether I'm preparing stuff for print or whether I'm just going to post on social media. And for me, there's so many inconsistent variables that you can't control. So for instance, if I make a video and I color it a certain way, I can't control what monitor somebody's going to be viewing my video on. I can't control what phone they're going to see my social posts on. Print actually allows for more control, but in any of these circumstances, I need to have a baseline that I trust. And that's why the monitor is so important to me, because it is the one thing, it's the bridge between my eyes and my creative mind into the output that I'm going to be putting out into the world. And so it is absolutely essential. Now, regardless of what monitor you use, calibration is the most important component of all this, because calibration is what establishes that baseline. It allows me to be able to trust the monitor, and I can see that the white balance is correct. I can see that the red, green, and blue channels are well balanced. I know that the color that I'm looking at is the color that it's supposed to be. And this is important because it doesn't matter whether somebody's viewing it on something that's uncalibrated, at least I know my baseline is correct, because if you don't have that, then it becomes the Wild West once it goes out. Now, the reality of color calibration is most people skip it, and there are a couple reasons why. One, it's pretty complicated, it's a little bit involved, it takes some time to do. And second of all, I think a lot of people just believe that whatever monitor they bought, they've spent all this money, it should just work right out of the box, correct? Not necessarily so. In fact, I calibrate all of my monitors every 6 months or so. You probably get away with doing it once a year, but it's important for me to have that baseline because that's what gives me the predictability in my own work. I know that I can trust the monitor and the color is what it's supposed to be. But what I love the most about this is Samsung have designed this in a way that makes it really easy. This is going to encourage more people to have their monitor calibrated correctly. I showed you how you can just use your smartphone, uses the cameras in the phone, and I love this. It's going to give you that predictability. And if my intense views towards calibration have not been convincing enough, let me tell you this, as my channel has grown over the years, and as I've become more visible, so has my work, and it's important to lead by example, and it comes down to this concept I call perception of craft. So craft is perceived only by the end result. In other words, people don't see all the mistakes that you made, the trial and error, all those things that take time to get to the final result where we're learning very slowly. And that's fine when you're starting out, but as you become better at what you do and you have more success with what you do, you need to get to a point where things are delivered quickly and consistently. And I'm at a point right now in my career such that I just don't have time for all those missteps. And so that's why having a monitor is so important, and it's probably the most important partner in my creative process. And so that is my point that I want to make, is that that perception is only the end result. You're going to get better end results if you have stuff that you can trust along the way. And of course, the fact that I trust the S9 frees up more time for things like artistic experimentation, the things that I want to do that are important, not just being chained to the desk and the computer all the time, just achieving the end result. I would also love to know what you guys think. So if you have any questions or anything, drop a comment below. If you want more information on the ViewFinity S9, I highly recommend this monitor. It is quite awesome. I will put a link below this video in the show description. I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, later.